Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this world. Hello, 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 hello. Hey, Cooks, what's up? Hey, Sam. Susan, good to see you. Others, oh, wait, no, same Sam. Renee X, what's up, everybody? How's it going in your neck of the woods? These streets have been on fire. Let me tell you what, they've been lit the fuck up, and I'm still sitting in my storm cellar. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. Yeah, so I don't know. Saving Private Starlight. There's no place like home. Hey, Ghost, how are you? Thank you. Thank you for listening. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't. I understand that this topic is not everyone's up everyone's alley. I know it's sad. I know it's all of the things, but I feel it's very important that, these stories be told. What's up, Aqua Turtle? Lulu? Lulu Boo? So good to hear or read your voice. So good to read yours, Lulu. Always look forward to your comments in the comment section. What's up, Dots? How you doing? Hello, Aleph. Hello. Hello and hello. Christy, Christy, Christy. The Rose Chick. You love you some Starlight, do you? Do you though? No, I appreciate that. I love you back. What's up, grandma's babies? Is everyone still knee deep in the dramas? Oh, what's up, Dank? What's up, everybody? I've been minding my P's and Q's, you know what I mean? Well, thank you, Just Taylor. Oh, thank you, Samantha XO. That's very sweet of you. Appreciate that. Appreciate all you guys want to come in here. Maybe get you a little break from the drama, watch something a little different. Learn you a lesson. Oh, you got married, Dots. You Dots went to the chapel and she got herself married. Oh, Keish, stop it. Please tell me you didn't end your live. I'm just gonna kind of pick up where I left off, and I did like a chat GPT summary to maybe help anyone that wasn't here the last time, because not what is it, a philanthropist or what the fuck ever. Not a wordsmith over here. Need a little help sometimes. You shouldn't have ended your live. People don't have to. You don't have to come here. No, don't come around here no more. No, for real. I understand if this is not people's thing. I get it. It's okay. Not gonna hurt my feelings. What's up, Danny Dorito, Crystal Pistol? You've been watching the hearings? Okay, good. That's very good. So you know what to expect. Very interesting stuff. We need to wrap up. Okay, so where we left off last time. Oh, thank you, Dank. Is we were watching the opening statements presented to somebody help me here. Um I heard Wilson talking about it. It was actually pretty interesting that she knows a good bit about this. Because they are okay, let me show you. I'm all over the place. Let me gather myself. Let me gather myself. All right. So, hold on, because there's something that happened today that I just remembered. That's why I got thrown off. But what was Wilson talking about? Oh, she was kind of talking and going over some of the things that we've already talked about, which is how there was a lack of a safety plan. There I did hear her say there were not radios or loudspeakers in the cabins, which are true. There were no, I don't know if they had radios. If they didn't, that's really that. I think we talked about that last time. But at the least they should do that. And no life jackets. That's right. Let me read my little overview here, a little AI thingy. See what it says. All right. The May 2026 hearings involving Camp Mystic focused on accountability, emergency preparedness, and whether the camp should be allowed to reopen after the catastrophic July 4th, 2025 Texas Hill Country floods that killed 27 campers and counselors. Families of victims packed the Texas state hearings. This is where I was asking for your help. Families of victims packed the Texas Capitol hearings wearing buttons with photos of their children while lawmakers and investigators questioned camp leaders about what went wrong. A major theme of the hearings was that the tragedy may have been preventable. Investigators testified that Camp Mystic lacked an organized flood evacuation plan, adequate emergency training for counselors, and basic flood preparedness supplies like life jackets and ladders. Testimony describes counselors performing heroic rescues in chaos, carrying girls through rising water, pushing children through cabin windows, and moving campers to higher ground with little guidance or coordination. And that is what we went over basically in the first stream, was everything they talked about there. As the what I'm guessing is the prosecutor is laying this out for the state, because that's why I brought. Okay, so Wilson was saying something about how, because there is a lawsuit that is they're being sued, of course, by many of these families. And so but this is separate from that. And I think this is a hearing for, so they could not open again this summer, if I am understanding correctly. Imagine someone not having content. Who's doing that, Marie? Who is streaming me on the TikTok? Who's doing that? And why? It's boring over here. I don't know. I don't give a shit. Watch me here, watch me there, whip and nay. Oh, now my dog is fighting with the cat. See, it's so interesting. Oakley. Here they go. You hear them? Do you hear them? Come on over, baby. That's right, Aqua Turtle. All right, so let me show you what happened today. Now, I have not dug into this. I just briefly saw this when I was getting ready for my stream. I was like, well, that's fucking interesting. So, if you don't know, the way that this whole hearing ended up, because again, this was about Camp Mystic wanting to reopen this summer, and the parents of the Heavens 27 saying, "Oh, no, 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 no." That's how I took it anyways. And they're at the state, and so Mystic ended up withdrawing their application to open this summer and decided they're just not going to do it, which is a great decision and the right decision, and should have been the decision from the beginning of this whole horrible, horrible tragedy. So when I was looking up something today, this showed up. Let me share my screen. Hold on. And I guess they had a hearing yesterday. It says judge lashes out at Camp Mystic lawyer after maneuver to file new motions hours before scheduled. Then it cuts off. I don't know.
A Travis County judge lashed out at lawyers for Camp Mystic today for pulling a midnight maneuver hours before a scheduled hearing.
Today, the court was supposed to consider whether the wrongful death lawsuits tied to the deaths of 25 young campers and 2 counselors could be compelled into private arbitration or remain in open court.
Now, those girls, along with Camp Mystic's director, died in last July's flash floods. As KVU's Daniel Perot shows us, the judge warned the move by Camp Mystic's legal team could be grounds for sanctions.
Judge Maya Garrett Gamble was clearly frustrated with Camp Mystic's lawyers on Wednesday, just hours before the hearing that they asked for on the motion to compel arbitration.
What a putz. Like, who put your outfit together this day, sir? I'm sorry. I need to stop it.
They withdrew their motion and filed another one, and some camp leaders did not have a lawyer representing them in the courtroom. Lawyers for the families who lost loved ones argued that Camp Mystic's attorneys waived their right to try and compel arbitration, which would take this whole process behind closed doors. After the judge said they only could withdraw their motion if both parties agreed, lawyers for the families say in order for them to allow Camp Mystic's lawyers to withdraw the motion, they had to do so with prejudice, which means they can't file that same motion again. And by withdrawing the motion last night, lawyers for the families argue Camp Mystic's legal team implicitly agreed to their demands to not file again.
This has been a long, protracted effort by the Eastlands and Camp Mystic to try to keep beating.
Let me finish this real quick.
Long, protracted effort by the Eastlands and Camp Mystic to try to keep beating our parents into submission with bad tactics and trial by ambush and trial by combat. And, we're going to raise some issues with the court around that.
Camp Mystic's lawyers pushed back on that in court and say there was nothing wrong with them filing their amended motion for arbitration, saying they had nothing in writing.
What is arbitration? Does somebody know what the hell that is? I could ask Mr. Google over here, but sometimes I just like to ask you guys, what is arbitration? This should have, hold on. What's up, Jay, by the way? And Dank, I didn't see what's going on with you, but let me see. You fell the other day. Oh, Lord, girl. I hope you're okay. I'm sorry. All right. Arbitration. Nobody knows what that is. Without a judge, make a deal. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
About any kind of agreement.
We have not accepted their proposal via email. There's no email agreement. There's no signed agreement. There's no Rule 11 agreement. There's nothing here that suggests there is any agreement. And simply declaring on one side, if you do this, the consequence will be that. Doesn't make it an agreement. So with respect, we reject that position.
While they did not deal with the arbitration motion, they did get some other stuff done. Both sides agreed on a scheduling framework for discovery. The first week of each month will be set aside for depositions, and each side agreed to limit questioning of young survivors to one attorney per side. The next hearing is set for June 10th. Lawyers for Camp Mystic.
There is more to come with this whole ordeal. There are lawsuits in the work, as they just said right there. Young survivors will be questioned or limited to one attorney per side. So we're going to have, children that went through this horrible ordeal. Thank you much. Thank you much. Thank you so much to the person who just sent me a PayPal. That is very much appreciated. Let's see if I have a little thank you. I don't think I do. I may have to get on my other one. But thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Truly appreciate it. I don't want to say your name out loud because I don't want to put it out there if that's not your screen name, but truly appreciate it. But like I said, there's going to be more to come here. So if you're interested, stay tuned, because I do want to talk about it when it happens, because this is already a lot that's coming out, with this hearing. I can't imagine what's going to happen as more of these children who are absolutely traumatized are ready to finally speak. Oh, and hold on. Before I move forward, I need to have this up on my screen because I do want to continue to show Seal. Okay. So this is Seal Stewart. Oops. Seal was at Camp Mystic. She was one of the little girls in one of the twins' cabin, I do believe, but it was her first year at camp. I think her mother was a Mystic girl. We'll hear more about Seal's story here in a little while. She is still missing. She has not been recovered. As far as I am aware, she is the only person still missing from the floods last summer. And there was almost 200 people killed in these floods, and they still have not found Seal. So, a lot of this is about that. And why would they want to open camp when Seal is still out there missing? Lord have mercy. Please check out the heavens27.org for more information on each of the girls who died in this tragedy. And let's pray and hope that Seal will be found. All right, here we go. Back to this. Sorry, Oakley's going ape shit. I think that was the end.
Survivors to one attorney per side. The next hearing is set for June 10th. Lawyers for Camp Mystic want the judge to take up the new arbitration motion. Then she says she'll make a decision on what motion she hears at a later date. In Austin, Daniel Perot, KVUE News.
Thank you, No Time for Stupidity. That's who sent me the PayPal. Thank you so much. It's very gracious of you and very appreciated. Thank you. All right, so we're going to just pick up where we left off. So if you are behind and you need to catch up, you're going to have to watch the hearing on your own or watch my last live stream, which is basically just me watching the hearing. So here we go. We're going to begin where we left off. And also, just so you know, there are other hearings that happened before this one. Some of the testimony is from the family that owns Camp Mystic, and I think it's important to hear what they have to say about this whole thing as well. And everyone can make a decision. It's a tough one. But, the people with the ultimate loss here is, of course, all of the families of these little girls. Just absolutely heartbreaking. All right, we're going to start here with Dick Eastland's web history. Dick is the owner of the camp. If you don't remember, the camp is owned by the Eastlands. And hold on, I do have a couple things I want to do before that. So I went to Google Earth because I cannot get it to pull up from on my computer for some reason. So I just took some screenshots here so people can kind of understand how Camp Mystic, the terrain. You really need to understand the, topography, if you will, of this camp. All right. So, like I said, there's two campuses to Camp Mystic. You can't see the other campus here. This is what they call the Guad campus because it is right along the Guadalupe River. This campus is the one that has been here for 100 years. The newer campus, which I said, plenty of times. So one my girls attended is Camp Mystic Cypress Lake, which is further up on the hill and, in my opinion, away from danger for sure. They call this area of Camp Mystic the Flats because it's just like flatlands. It's in a valley. It is in a obvious flood zone. So I hope you guys can see that. Let me see. I need to switch to my phone to view my chat. So I think you can see my cursor. Let me double check. Can you see my cursor? Yep, there it is. Maybe. Yeah. All right. What's up, shit show? I see your little eyeballs poking in here. So down here in these lower lying cabins, which, obviously closest to the river, right? This cabin being the first one. I cannot remember all their names. But these cabins, all evacuated first by Dick Eastland and his son, Edward Eastland. Here are the, some of the roads here. We have, I think this is the dining hall. Back here, you have what they call rec hall. You can see the fields here, a little soccer field. What is that, a tennis court or something? And the rec hall building. Okay. Not sure exactly what building that is right behind Rec Hall. Not sure which one this is, but one of these is that Rec Hall because they had to evacuate to, I thought it was Rec Hall. There's no way. We'll figure that out. But just so you get an idea, okay? Up here, that goes uphill here, you go downhill. And there's cabins all along right here, this hillside, all cabins. And then you get right here to the middle part between the dining hall. I believe this is an office. And these are the two youngest cabins, Bubble Inn and what they call Twins 1 and 2. Now, sometimes I get thrown off and I have to look at pictures better, but to me that looks like, I can't tell if that's a building. Twins is, I can't remember. They're right here. Whichever, I know that's Bubble Inn. I believe that's Twins. Hold on, I have a couple of other pictures. I thought I sent them. Just to give you guys an idea. All right, here's another Google Earth image. Let me see where I'm at here. I'm even confused what I'm looking at. Oh, the fuck is it? That's Cypress. Okay, that's Cypress. Okay, I see what I'm looking at now. Okay, it takes me a second. Okay, so up here, if you can see my cursor, you go up here. See all these weird little paths? Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what the fuck these things are. Whatever. You go up here. This is the Cypress Lake campus of Camp Mystic, the second campus. You can see the cabins here. It's, like I said, further up on the hill on higher elevation, and obviously quite a walk if you're having to evacuate from a flood zone way down here. So a lot of the campers in these cabins had to get out by foot, and they went up, I believe they said, this hill here. Then get to what they call Sky High, which may be here, if I understand correctly. Hold on, I have a couple more. Bear with me. This is another view of the cabins, Bubble Inn, and I think I was wrong the first. I think this is Twins 1 and 2 right here. I could be wrong on that. I do know that is Bubble Inn, and this could be Twins. This could be the office. It's really hard to follow. One more. All right, this is another view, just so you can kind of see, the river, how it runs here. So you've got the Guadalupe River right there. This is what they call Cypress Creek, I do believe. Cypress Creek runs through there. Then there's something called Edmondson's Creek that runs right through there. And all three of those obviously flooded. And here again, you have those cabins I was talking about earlier. All right, we're going to move on. I'm going to let this play for a little bit. Hold on. I think I played some of this last time. I want to get to where we were last time because this is a very. All right. This is about where we left off last time. I am so stupid. I am so stupid. Rookie over here. Okay, I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen. Man, what a fool. What a fool. Poor, poor, pitiful me. All right, let me get back to where we were. We're about right here, I think.
In the distance is Rec Hall, right? This is the same time, 3:26 a.m., as you see girls walking to Rec Hall. If you focus in the back of the video, you'll see those same girls walking into Rec Hall. You'll notice that the power is still on, lights are still on, and you'll get.
Hold on, y'all. I pushed buttons. Now my stuff is being weird. Hold on. There, that fixed it. There we go. Sorry about that.
A feel for what was going on in Twins 1 and 2. .350. You can see activity inside of Twins. You can see the lights are on. You have to study it, but you can see. I think you can see possibly Edward and or counselors. They're trying to figure out what's going on. We know from Edward's iPhone data that at 4:09 a.m. he is submerged underwater. But what happens is that he walks to that porch that we were standing on. He gets through the water to that first porch.
Yeah, for anyone out there, this very sensitive, very sad, very heartbreaking. So trigger warning for anyone that needs one. Get your tissues out. All of this just very heartbreaking, very sad. That's all I can say.
One of the counselors from Twins 1 comes out onto the porch to talk to him, leaving the 17-year-old counselor alone in Twins 1 with her girls. The counselor that came out and Edward cannot open the door at that point to Twins 1. They cannot get back into Twins 1. They both describe trying really hard to get back into Twins 1. They can't, so they walk down that little porch and go into Twins 2, where there are two Ets in there with their campers. There are vents between in the adjoining wall. They begin to talk to the 17-year-old counselor through the vents, trying to give her some guidance, telling her what to do. Edward describes, frantically looking for options. He's trying to figure out how to get a vent out of the ceiling. There's no tools. He's looking around for options. They're trying to figure out what to do. Again, the problem that they had that Glenn didn't have was the flat ceilings. They know that they're running out of options sooner than was happening in cabins that had vaulted ceilings. And so we know from statements and from Edward that the 17-year-old counselor made the critical decision, because it did save some girls, to start getting them out of the cabin. They were just running out of airspace. One survivor one parent of a survivor said her daughter described having her chin, inches from the ceiling. And so there was only one option, and it was for those girls to get out of that cabin. And so the little counselor starts moving them out of the cabin. Apparently something in the pressure changed because the accounts described that she was getting them out of the door of that and was able to open the door. They described having to push the girls under the water to get out of the door and back above the water. Mary Grace Baker drowned in the river. Lucy Dillon drowned inside Twins One. She was found inside Twins One the next day. Mary Kate Jacoby drowned in the river. Hannah Lawrence, who's a twin, drowned in the river. Kellyanne Lytle, Blakely McCrory, they all drowned in the river. The other girls that I have labeled Bug House Tree, which are 4 girls, as I showed you at the site visit.
I'll give it to this prosecutor, man. It's a tough job to have to get up there and present all this with the families behind you. I can just hear them sobbing. It's so sad.
Visit, there was that little grove of trees right past the Bug House cabin. And because of the direction of the water at whatever point, these girls were thrust into that direction. And, it's not obviously like some cartoon where they just landed in the tree. No, they were grasping at limbs. They were grasping and trying to get into this grove of trees to safety. And these 4 little girls were able to do that, along with the 17-year-old counselor that was with them. They all ended up in the Bug House Tree. This little girl right here, where I have clung to column, she was thrust also in that same direction, but landed a little earlier at Tumble Inn, we believe. We believe she was at Tumble Inn on one of those limestone columns. She was able to grab onto one of those limestone.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself again. Do you know when flood warnings were officially issued? How many hours prior to this? I'd have to go back to actually check, because they do talk about it in these opening statements. But I think there were what's it? Okay, see, even I don't know. There's a flood warning and a flood warning and a flood watch. That's what I was thinking of. Flood watch and flood warning. What's the difference? Which is the worst one? The warning? Which one comes first? A warning or a watch? A watch? Okay. I think the watch came in hours before. I don't know. I don't want to tell you wrong, because I want to say it wasn't until an hour or 2 before it happened. I could be wrong. We'd have to go back and check the timeline. I'll put this in the chat if anyone wants to watch it in full without my loud mouth. But it's in there. I do know that. I just don't know where. They talk about it. But Mr. Eastland was actively watching the weather. He didn't go to sleep that night. He was watching. He knew there was going to be flooding. Nobody expected, obviously a catastrophic event for sure. But there was definitely negligence on their part, which is unfortunate.
Stone columns, and as the water continued to rush violently past her, she clung to that column and moved up, said she was neck high in water, and clung to just clung to that column for 2 hours and lived.
Okay, now that story of the little girl she's talking about who clung to the column, we listened to her mother's testimony last time I was live. We will try to re-listen to hers again today, but we're gonna start after the opening statements with I'm gonna skip over the Eastlands testimony because I want to play their testimony from another hearing that they had, because the one with this one was honestly just kind of like them asking back and forth questions. It was just very formal, where people really need to hear the impactful statements from the survivors and the parents. But the mom describes everything she's talking about. This little girl who clung to this pillar for 4 hours, I think she said. It's just horrific what they went through.
This little girl right here, I'm going to bookmark her. She and another little girl from Twins 2 were found alive down the river. And I'll tell you that story in 1 second. This is the Twins 2 cabin photo. Hadley Hannah died in the river.
We're going to
This
go
is the
back to that photo. Like she said, this is the Twins 2 cabin. Am I on mute? Let me check. No, I'm not. There again, Seal Stewart still missing. Still being looked for right here. Seal Stewart.
Twins 2 cabin photo. Hadley Hannah died in the river. Virginia Hollis made it to the bug house tree, but couldn't hold on. She dropped out of the tree and died in the river. Rebecca Lawrence, twin to Hannah, died in the river. Margaret Sheedy and Seal Stewart all died in the river. And as you know, Seal Stewart's remains have still not been found.
Yes, Cook, still missing.
4
just one
little girls.
Sorry, just one little girl here. I accidentally closed out the wrong window. Let me bring Seal's photo up one more time, or a couple more times, actually. I'm going to show her image. If you go to Heavens 27 Foundation, I need to get the link to that as well to drop in the chat. Hold on. This is Seal Stewart. And you can find out more about how you can help in the efforts at Heavens 27. I think if you sign something, it helps people to look every day for Seal until she is found. And her parents also testify at this. It's heartbreaking. Her mother's a very strong woman, though. I'll give her that for sure. She's a lot of things, actually.
Ended up in the bug house tree. And one counselor ended up in the bug house tree. The other counselor ended up alone in a different tree. So again, they were all sort of thrust in that, I guess if they got in that one flow, they all got shoved into that bug house tree. This little girl right here and this little girl right here, I'll tell those stories in a minute. They were found alive down the river. This is what we're referring to as the bug house tree, but this is after it has sort of fallen over, after people were rescued from the bug house tree. But you can see this is bug house right here. So just beyond, but up on the hill is this grove of trees that the three counselors, 8 campers, and then Edward Eastland was also pushed over to the bug house tree and survived along with those other people in the bug house tree. This is just to give you some scale. This was on one of our trips. The bug house tree has been removed because it did fall down. This is where the base of the bug house tree was. So that kind of gives you some perspective about how high the water was. This little girl, oh my goodness. This little girl is alive. She traveled 6.5 miles down the river from Camp Mystic and was found near Camp La Junta. 6 6.5 miles, that little girl fought with debris, described to her parents that
Sorry, I just said all that on mute, but it wasn't really that relevant. But dang, 6.5 miles. 6.5 miles. And we talked about that last time, but just look up how far 6.5 miles is. It's a long way to float downstream, or not float, go down a raging river full of debris and survive. It's incredible. Hey, Sarah.
she was submerged multiple times. These parents of these survivors have every single one of them described the most surreal moment when their daughters so calmly told them, "That was the point, Daddy, when I knew I was going to die. I just knew I was going to die." Up and down, submerged and up, under debris, covered in ant bites. This little girl gets thrust upon a debris pile and stays there. Actually, I think falls asleep. You can imagine why. And when the water recedes, two young women, two sisters that were living in their grandparents' house, come out at daybreak to sort of assess what's going on. And they hear, "Help, help." And they search and search. It takes a while. I mean, this is a debris pile that's out in kind of in the middle of the river, sort of out in the water. And they can't find her, but they can hear her. And then they describe this little head pops up. This little girl's head pops up, and they get over to the debris pile, and they get this little baby girl off of the debris pile. And they take her actually to the La Junta camp infirmary, and La Junta takes custody of this little girl. These two little girls didn't make it to the bug house tree, but they're alive. They were also thrust downriver. They traveled approximately a mile down the river. Also were thrown on, they weren't together, so to speak. I mean, they didn't realize each other was, you know, they each got thrust down the river and landed on this big debris pile, some distance apart. This was approximately 4 a.m. We know Edward was submerged at 4:09 and swept off the porch around 4:09. So that's kind of the time frame. So in that 4:09 to 4:19 period of time, they are on a debris pile near the home of the Griffin family. The Griffins, Lori and Grant Griffin, grew up there. They've lived there their whole lives. He's a home builder in that area. Their house was flooding. It was flooding significantly. Their power was out. They were moving things to the second floor. They had their windows open, and the same type of thing happened with them. In the midst of this loud storm, this raging noise from the river, they hear, "Help, help." Again, it's pitch black. It's pouring rain. Storming like crazy. The river is rushing downriver. It's flooding the Griffin's home, and they rush out into the dark of night, Mr. Griffin and his young adult daughter's boyfriend, and they rescue these two little girls off of the debris pile.
Out, but then we all fell out of the window, and the water started rushing, and it ran this way. And I went underwater and almost drowned, and I thought I was gonna die, but then I came in.
Because then, I couldn't breathe. I just kept going up in the water, but I wasn't breathing because I literally couldn't.
My legs are so sore.
So you guys just grabbed onto a tree and floated down with it?
Well,
there was
I had to tread water.
Mine was staying in place, so I was like, okay, I'll just stay on here. But then that was where you guys were. So.
Friday, July 4th, 2025, 4:19 and 7 seconds.
Kirk County 911, what's your emergency?
Hello, this is Riley Gray, and I live at 2551 Highway 39 in Hunt, Texas. And we've got the flood is up to our house right now. We're okay, but we live about a mile down the road from Camp Mystic, and we've already got 2 little girls who have come down the river, and we've gotten to them, but I'm not sure how many else are out there.
Okay. What is your address?
It's 2551 Highway 39.
And you have the girls at your house?
We have two little girls who have come by in the river, and we've been able to grab them, and that's all we've seen so far.
Okay.
But
And what
they
is your
said that
name?
they watched Riley Griffin.
And a callback number for you.
I'm sorry.
And your callback number?
83.
Okay, as I mentioned to you earlier,
Dr.
so much
Phil.
is going on in so many of the other areas of the camp while all of this is going on. All of the girls that were initially evacuated in those first 2 attempts, 95 campers and 13 counselors, end up in Rec Hall, which you guys walked into, and you saw that there was a balcony that measures about 5 feet.
Okay,
Wide.
so Rec Hall. I'm trying to figure out which one is Rec Hall because all of the girls. Am I on mute? Let's double check. No, I am not. Okay, not all of the girls, but a lot of the girls were ushered into Rec Hall, and they were up on these old as fuck. Look how old that shit. These rafters, the second level, if you will. They were up there and the water was like up to the rafters, the second level, whatever you want to call that. But where's that on the map? Where's the map? Where's the map? Where's the map? Let's see. I love me a good map, okay? All right. So I would think this giant building back here by that little red thing, I would think that would be Rec Hall, but I pictured Rec Hall to be enclosed. I don't know. I'm so confused. Anyways, maybe we'll figure it out. The Rec Hall is the big building in the middle of Camp Mystic. So is it that one that I'm pointing at there? By the tennis courts right here? There's no walls to this structure though. From what I've seen when it's like on the flat, when you can actually see inside of it, doesn't look like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Rec Hall is enclosed and yet, okay. Is the front of Rec Hall enclosed? Maybe that's where I'm getting confused. I thought that was an open structure, like a pavilion. Is there a pavilion out there too? Yes, by the tennis court. Okay. Okay. Yes, very close to home for sure. Way too close. And that's another thing. I don't think people understand just how small Hunt, Texas is. It's literally a nothing. It's a little nothing town. It's just in the middle of nowhere. This is basically the main road that you go through, and it goes through all of these camps. So, there's not a lot of like 911 rescue out there. They were all stranded. It's a horrible, horrible situation. The house behind the tennis court. So, okay, I thought that was an open structure, but maybe I'm wrong. I'll see. Let's keep playing the video. Okay. All right. Hold on. I got a picture now of Rec Hall. Okay. I was thinking of that is a pavilion. So let me show you. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Show this tab. Let's make sure I'm not muted. Okay. There we go. Okay. So Rec Hall is actually this tiny building over here. I say tiny, but in comparison, there's Rec Hall. It's not this building. That's some sort of pavilion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this is, if I'm reading this correctly, Rec Hall is this little barn type structure out here. See what I'm saying? So there's the office. There's Twins 1 and 2 right here, if you can see my cursor. And then Bubble Inn would be, I think, right there. Pretty sure. So there you go. Rec Hall is not that big giant building. Hey, Tony Macaroni. I'm not muted, am I? You can hear me. Okay, so they went from down there up to, I wonder why they sent them there to Rec Hall. It's kind of a dinky little building, but all of this was flooded out. You can kind of see it in this photo here. A lot of flooding. That's crazy. I thought Rec Hall would have been a lot bigger. I don't know why I pictured it as an actual big structure. Surprised it didn't get knocked down, to be honest. They're very lucky. Bigger space and rising water. It's kind of small though. See, it's behind the pavilion. It's just good that they made it there, It's so sad. All right, let's get back to this.
The audio is slightly cut off. This is a counselor saying that there was no authority figure in Rec Hall. It was counselors and campers. And what was happening is Rec Hall counselors are the ones that got the girls up onto the balcony because Rec Hall was completely filling up with water. And every single person I interviewed said that they could have reached down through the slats in the balcony and touched water. Counselors described to me that they were thinking through exit plans. They weren't sure if the water was going to keep rising and if they were going to have to get out. Cozy Cabin. Now, Cozy Cabin, I showed you on our site tour, is attached to the front office. Cozy Cabin are the living quarters for the big three and the photographers. Again, they're all college-age girls. It is located right there at the front office. It's just separated by that pavilion. These are the members of the big three and the other office workers and photographers that were housed in Cozy Cabin. 3 of the big three posted on social media that they were awakened at 3:15 to evacuate campers. So a reminder, they have a walkie-talkie. We're not sure who woke them up, but they were awakened at 3:11 to help evacuate campers. This is what was going on in Cozy Cabin. At 3:43 a.m. on the left, and you can see the trunks floating at 3:46 a.m. Notable from these photos in the front office is that the power is still on. Front office is where the PA system is accessible to be used. You can see that this is the pavilion at 3:50 a.m. right outside of that area. Power.
Dang, that's that big pavilion that we were looking at, right? That's crazy. And that's at 3:50 a.m. And that's how high it was. That's bonkers. Damn.
Power is still on. You can see the lights still on in the background. At 4:22 a.m., these are members of the big three on the roof of Cozy Cabin. They certainly had their own sort of harrowing experience. One of the big three was almost rushed down the river, but was able to grab on to, I believe, like a volleyball net or something, and sort of miraculously make it back over to the roof. So they sat on the roof. All right, remember the guardhouse. I'm not going to spend too much time.
Okay, hold on. What did you say? Do you know if these teen counselors were given any kind of emergency training prior to becoming counselors? No. I mean, maybe they had first aid and CPR, like that kind of training, but as far as like what to do if there's an emergency flood, no. There was no plan, and that's the big issue here is there was nothing in place for such an event. If anything, they were told to shelter in place, and that's sad. Because if they would have left, they probably would have survived.
On this, but it is significant. This is where Frances Loper was living. This is where she made her friend.
Yeah, they say that, Danny Dorito, but then so Danny Dorito said on your last live, they also said they were having staffing issues, but when they question the Camp Mystic people, like Edward, all of the Eastlands, they say they were not having staffing issues. So I don't know how true that is. I guess it depends on who you ask, one of those type of things. But a lot of the parents had issue over the fact that there were only 2 counselors in every cabin instead of 3, which I agree with. There should have been 3 counselors. I mean, it would have taken maybe one more person to just say, you know what, fuck it, let's go. Let's not sit here and wait. I don't know. It's horrible. But yeah, and there's just a lot of things that went wrong. A lot of people that didn't, live up to what their duty should have been. One of them being Edward Eastland's wife. Her name is Mary Liz. She was like the head nurse of Camp Mystic. And she was like nowhere to be found, allegedly. But she had to testify as well. So, in due time.
Frantic call that the guardhouse is taking on water at about 2:55. You'll notice that the proximity of the guardhouse to the Guadalupe River appear at the top. Bug house.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out where the heck that was earlier. The guardhouse. Let's see. Let's switch here. So I'm thinking it would be up here on this little hill here. Let's see if my other picture is any better. See what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know where that damn guardhouse is. But that guardhouse got demolished. So that's why it's interesting to me where the heck it's at. Maybe it's down here. I don't know. All right. There's the state highway. So the guardhouse is down by the road area. I'm looking at the wrong spot. That's why. Okay.
This is down here.
So it's as you would think, towards the entrance of the camp. Okay.
This was her quarters before the flood. This was her quarters after the flood. It was one of the buildings that was completely washed off of its foundation. This is Frances Blackwell Loper's car.
The Guadalupe River is quite. Is it how big? It's a big river. The Guadalupe River is huge, so I'm sure it has flooded somewhere horribly before. But as far as Texas, no, not that I know of. Like I'd have to Google to double check myself, but this is the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime, in my mom's lifetime, as far as I can. She knows. Who knows? So, yeah, look at that car. There were still cars like that down there in October. Is that Dick Eastland's car? No, Frances Blackwell Loper. This is the guard shack lady's car. Good Lord, look at that. Just wrapped right around it.
Washed off of its foundation. This is Frances Blackwell Loper's car, found 8 miles down the river that was parked near the gatehouse. And let me point out, Frances is lucky to be alive. I mean, she had a harrowing experience. She was pushed out onto the porch of her cabin, clung to a column there. Water's rising very quickly. She is thrust down the river. She also believes that she's drowning and going to die. She eventually makes it to a tree, like so many people, and she clings to the tree. She spends a week in the hospital. She ends up climbing her way up to Senior Hill, where some of the counselors on Senior Hill help her, and then she's evacuated. So Senior Hill. Senior Hill is that area right there. It is, and you guys saw it from our vantage point. It's elevated. Senior Hill doesn't typically flood. They just are commonly cut off from the rest of the camp by the flooding of the land bridge. The flood was so bad this time that 2 cabins on Senior Hill also flooded. Counselors on Senior Hill were completely cut off from communication. A counselor on Senior Hill uses a phone that somebody actually kept to call 911 at 3:56 and 3:57 a.m. Some of the main points that she makes in her 911 call is, what do we do? We're completely cut off from the main office. We're completely cut off from communications, and we don't know what to do. They evacuated from their cabins, went kind of higher up to the back where it's a little bit higher to those cabins. Somebody broke into the riflery range cabinet and got a walkie-talkie out. They made numerous calls on the walkie-talkie that apparently went unheard.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Okay, now moving towards some of the other areas of the camp that are relevant. We pointed out to you what's called the uptight garage area. That is this area right here. We were standing right by it over there on that road and up on that little grassy hill. So this is the uptight garage. Okay, these are the adults that were on the flats side of the camp when all of this was happening. Remember, this is Edmondson Creek. So these are the adults that are not isolated from the flats portion. These are the adults that are on the flats side of the camp. In uptight garage, we know there's at least 9 groundskeepers because we saw them in that photo. We know that the groundskeepers were cut off from going farther up that road, up the hill to where their quarters were. So we know that they were down here. We also know that some of the Polish male kitchen workers were in this uptight and garage area. We know that there were 3 nurses in this building right here called Heaven Can Wait, the infirmary. We know that Craig and Betsy Althouse were living in this house right here called Sugar Shack. We know that Richard Eastland, the camp chef, was staying in Granny's cabin. Richard and his wife Leslie were living in this house right here, Pop Inn. But at the time of the flood last year, Pop Inn was being renovated. So they were not living in Pop Inn last year. It was under construction. Leslie was living in a house in town in Ingram and was by herself with her dogs in a home in Ingram. And Richard, because it was camp season and he kept very odd hours since he had to always get up in the middle of the night to prep for breakfast, he was staying in Granny's cabin. Tweety Eastland's brother, Frank Albritton, was staying in Squeeze Inn, this building right here. And so these are the adults that are on the flats side of Edmondson Creek at the time of all of this flooding. Richard Eastland describes to us that he wakes up kind of in the middle of the night, I think something like 2:30. It's raining, but he is not aware of anything crazy going on. He begins to do some of his work, which is typical for him. It's typical for him to leave his radio off or not have the radio because of his unusual hours. Because he's up at all different hours, he stays off the radio. So he was cut off from communication, was not monitoring the radio the way.
Kimmy P, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? What's up, Kimmy? Oh my God. It's so good to see your little eyeballs. I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing good. I bet your little ones have gotten so big. Mine are. Lord have mercy. Give me a run for my fucking money. Woo. All right, I don't want to be like disrespectful, but I love you, Kimmy. I love you so much. You my baby forever. My boo thing. What's up?
Britt Eastland was able to do from the Cypress Lake campus. Betsy Althouse looks out her window and starts seeing headlights. She sees cars moving around. She realizes something odd is going on, so she wakes up Craig and says, hey, we need to get up. Something's going on out there. Eventually, what happens is Craig and Betsy come outside. Craig describes that he drives a four-wheeler or a 4x4 type vehicle kind of around that corner on the road, realizes the water's way too high, so he comes back. So at some point, you have all of these adults out of their...
Kimmy, remember when John Crimes would be like, my baby girl, my baby girl, my baby girl. I love you, baby girl. All right, sorry.
Respective cabins and homes, all sort of congregating right here, right off the edge of Uptight Garage. They're standing on this just slightly elevated grassy area. Richard and some of the, maybe the grounds crew, I'm not sure, but somebody goes over to the infirmary and gets the 3 nurses out and brings them back over here to where they're all sort of standing. Now, it's important to know that Richard has 2 daughters in cabins on the flats. He's got a daughter in Bug House and he's got a daughter in Nut Hut. So one daughter.
Okay, I think that's very important to note. So put that in your handy dandy notebook. That one of the Eastlands, one of the brothers here, he had daughters in both of 2 of the underlying cabins. Chai Girl, did you send me? Hold on, I need to check my thing. Hold on, I wanted to say it earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt. Susan Ryan, thank you so much for the Cash App. And Angie, I don't want to say your whole name. Thank you so much. Love you. You're amazing. She does look like Jan. Who looks like Jan? Like Jan. Who? Jan from... Oh, sorry. My bad.
Daughter gets evacuated to Rec Hall. One daughter is taken up the hill by her counselor.
From The Office. I don't remember it. Y'all, I hadn't watched The Office in a long time. Dory, look at all these old familiar faces on here. What's up, Dory? It's good to see you. And the evacuation plan was outdated and not updated to state standards, but the Eastlands owned another Camp Mystic and the license to open this year was denied. Well, now, someone correct me if I am wrong, but the way I understood it was, okay, so what I know of Camp Mystic, what I know to be true, it's the fact. There's 2 campuses. There's the Guadalupe campus, and then there is the Cypress Lake campus. They wanted to reopen the Cypress Lake campus, which was not affected by the floods. And instead, that's what all these hearings were about, was to stop their application. So after, the parents testified and all of that, the Eastlands pulled their application and decided not to open up this summer, which again was the correct and right thing to do. It should have been what they did from the get-go. And let us not forget, once again, Seal Stewart, still missing from Camp Stewart. She was killed in the floods, and her remains have still not been found to this day. So I'm going to keep repeating that. All right, let us continue.
So it's pretty hard to understand why all these adults were here and just truly lacked information. They had no idea what was going on. I think that is most profoundly illustrated by the fact that Richard had girls in those cabins. If he had known what was going on, I'm sure he wouldn't have been standing with all of these adults on that little grassy area right outside of Uptight Garage. These people were completely deprived of information. It appears from all of the witness interviews that they were completely starved of information. They didn't have specific assignments. They weren't told where to go. They weren't delegated. They weren't given any information on where to go. And essentially, they stayed over in this area and did not take action. And it's a bit of a mystery why. But once the water receded, and it became more apparent what was going on, you'll hear in a minute that the grounds crew and Richard and Craig end up walking behind the cabins and come all the way down and start rescuing people out of the bug house tree. So I quickly want to touch on very quickly what's going on the Cypress Lake campsite of things. On the other side of the Bubblegum Creek that you've seen, Ranch House and Cypress Hollow are the residences occupied by Edward and Mary Liz in Ranch House, Tweety and Dick in Cypress Hollow. These are the adults that are on the other side of Edmondson Creek. Mary Liz Eastland is in Ranch House with her 4 sons, ranging in age from 6 to 16. Meredith Martin is in Beehive. Tweety Eastland is in her home in Cypress, Cypress Hollow.
Carolina girl,
and Britt and Katie Eastland are over on the Cypress Lake campus. There's been much made of what these people were doing at the time of all of this. The reality is they were cut off from at 2:14. I mean, obviously, there was a period between the 1:14 a.m. alert and the 2:01 or 2:14 cutoff of the Edmondson Creek. You know, arguably there was action to be taken between those minutes, but again, at 2:01 and 2:14, there was just nothing to be done. And it's important to know that they were flooding significantly on their, on their own. I should mention that Leslie Eastland almost died in the house that she was in Ingram. She woke up to a massive amount of water, was swept out of her house, and was actually sort of rescued and helped by a lot of those people that ended up on the roof of River Inn. And she wrote out.
I know this is a lot of information, but we're almost through it. Okay. We're almost through the opening, and then we'll get to the testimonies.
At the storm there and narrowly escaped drowning herself. Mary Liz and her 4 sons were in Ranch House. They are taking on a significant amount of water. Meredith Martin walks over to Tweety's house because she's terrified and scared and flooding. Mary Liz and her 4 sons walk over to where Meredith and Tweety are at Cypress.
Susan, I hope you heard me. I said thank you so much for the Cash App. I didn't see it. Well, I did, but it was in the middle of this and I couldn't say anything. But thank you so much.
Hollow. They go inside Cypress Hollow thinking it might be, I think, a little bit safer at that point. Water is rushing in. They start making plans to go up into the attic to get higher when doors burst open and water just floods in the house. So they evacuate from Cypress Hollow and they begin walking up that hill that you saw past those chicken coops up towards Cypress Lake. So they're, again, middle of the night, pitch black. They have flashlights. It's raining, and they're walking up the hill. Mary Liz, her 4 sons, Meredith Martin, and Tweety. As they begin walking up the hill, Britt and Katie Eastland are making their way. Britt and Katie described that during these hours, they are patrolling Cypress Lake. They are, in their vehicle, making rounds of Cypress Lake, trying to make sure their campers are all safe. They begin driving down that road when they hear car alarms and they see a bunch of lights. And what they realize is that right here is counselor parking lot where multiple cars were parked. Those cars were all floating around and car alarms were going off and headlights were going off. So obviously Britt and Katie, that gets their attention. They start driving down the road and then they start seeing flashlights and they approach this group of Mary Liz, 4 sons, Meredith and Tweety. Mary Liz says, take your mother. Tweety gets into Britt's vehicle. They drive her back to their home called Big Rock right there. And Mary Liz's boys did not want to get into a vehicle. And so Mary Liz, her 4 boys, and Meredith Martin walk all the way up the hill up to Cypress Lake, where they remain until they come back down to deal with what's going on the flats. Daylight and beyond, the aftermath. We're getting there. Richard and the grounds crew and Craig Althouse make their way behind all of the cabins to the bug house tree. The water has started to recede. Of course, it's not completely receded, but they are able to use ladders and ropes, and they're able to get Edward, the little girls, the counselors, and then the other counselor that was alone in a different tree. They are able to evacuate everybody from the bug house tree. Sometime later, a few hundred yards down, the river has to recede even more, and that's when they find Dick's Tahoe with Dick and the 3 little girls in it. Also, at some point on July 4th, we're told approximately between like noon and 3, Lucy Dillon is found in the Twins 1 cabin. So those are the deaths that are the bodies that are found, on or near Mystic property. They begin an elaborate evacuation process. Thank God there had been pre-deployed resources. There were helicopters that had been, pre-deployed. There were National Guard trucks. All the girls from Cypress Lake were evacuated via trucks, but all the girls from the Guadalupe River campus were helicoptered out. This is where we move into a period of time that I think should be important to this committee, and not going too far outside of the scope of what happened at Mystic, but the hours right after this event were significant and harrowing for a number of reasons. One of the things we learned in Uvalde, of course, was the importance of incident command. Obviously, incident command is critical in the middle of an event, like an active shooter or a disaster. But we learned a lot about the fact that there's incident command in the post-event response, and there must be incident command in the post-event response because there's so much going on, and things could be handled so much better. Part of the problem with an absolute lack of incident command in those minutes and hours after this event is that there was no rhyme or reason to picking a place for these people to go. I mean, you got to remember now, these people are all.
This is horrible, by the way. I just want to point out in particular these prank calls. So I know when this first happened, like these parents were desperate. They were throwing their children's pictures and phone numbers of where to contact them all over the internet, desperate for help. And people use that to prank call them and say some of the most horrendous things. It is people like, you're just vile, evil people. It should be criminal to do things like that. Hey, Hakab, good to see you. Yeah, just horrible. Something that FBI would do. Oh, I said it. Probably is.
Getting flooded with text messages and phone calls and trying to figure out what the heck is happening, right? They're waking up in their homes or on vacation or whatever, and they're trying to figure out what's happening. And they all start to make their way to Hunt, right? To be there. They are not really told where to go. They're told to go one place, and then it turns out to be 5 different places. There's no information. There's no good information. Then when there's no information, you guys know what happens when there's no information. Then people fill it with bad information.
I don't know, like who could be so cruel to do such a thing a grieving parent. That's like the most despicable thing you could do. It's disgusting.
And that was done in spades. There was just just the telephone game, just false information to fill the void of no information. And there was no information because there was no unified incident command. There was nobody truly setting up a command post and making decisions about how to handle the reunification process and how to handle the notification process and how to handle getting information to these parents who had children at that point that were unaccounted for. So it was dreadful misinformation,
It's horrible. And like, if you stay and listen to these testimonies, one of the dad talks about how he went down there and he identified his daughter. Okay. He thought it was his daughter and he gave her a kiss on the cheek, and told her goodbye. And then later got a call that it was not his daughter and that they needed a DNA sample. So it wasn't even his child. Like, it's horrible. But I'm telling you, Hunt, Ingram, those towns are tiny. Cruel randoms. But either way, it's pretty bad. But yeah, it was not an ideal situation at all. It was horrible, horrendous.
County officials, sending out messages that all of the girls were accounted for. People saying that, Dick and some girls were on an island or that somebody was in a tree. The misinformation
I remember
added
that.
so much.
That was very much a thing because after it first happened, people were saying that all of the kids and Dick were found on an island. I was like, people were so relieved, or, they were pulled from a tree, which is half true, I guess, but there was tons of misinformation at first. All the kids were accounted for, people thought.
Much torment and despair to these parents during these hours, and it could have been avoided with proper post-event response. There was a shocking delay of resources that were available being deployed. I had conversations with 2 people involved with the Cajun Navy that were sort of stiff-armed at the very, very beginning and told to stand down, told that they weren't needed. There were other jurisdictions in that area that were eager for them to come, and so they did deploy to those areas. But in the first 24 hours, they were denied access into this area. You're going to hear testimony tomorrow from one of the dads, Michael McCowan, who sort of self-deployed to the camp in the early morning hours of July 5th and was shocked to get there and see not a single search and rescue person searching. I think the most telling lack of search and rescue is that Michael actually found a child's body, and he was completely alone and had no idea what to do. And so that was clearly the job of search and rescue, and it was clearly not being done. Meanwhile,
that father testifies as well about looking for his daughter and coming across one of the other little girls. Yeah.
Hunter Burns and Josh Gill of the Cajun Navy have thermal drones, helicopters, hundreds of off-duty firefighters, off-duty policemen, certified search and rescue people that are ready to go out there that were
Damn it, I'm muted. Yes, Aqua Turtle. Fuck. I'm sorry. I'm trying to watch my mouth a little bit. I'm so sorry. My bad. But Lulu said, I remember that you put a video out that the parents were looking for their little girl stuffed toy. Do you know if they ever found it? Yes, they did find it. There's a Facebook group on Facebook, obviously, and it's called Found on the Guadalupe, and they they're still searching this day for things that were washed away in the flood. And they found her stuffed animal and were able to give it back to her parents.
That were sort of pushed back, and a proper incident commander would have accepted their resources. They described being in Center Point where there was an incident commander, one of the fire department officials, and they were like, come on, we need you, right? And that was not done here, and that was really unfortunate. One of the things that as a 33-year criminal lawyer, it's sort of hard to shock me with human behavior. But I was so shocked and so devastated when these parents, each and every one of them, told me that because they had made a decision to put their daughter's picture and their personal cell phones onto social media because they were so hopeful that some Grant Griffin had plucked their daughter off.
Now, see, okay. This guy back here, you can barely see him because it's just hard to point it out on a video. But that is Edward Eastland. And he is one of, he was Dick Eastland. He is Dick Eastland's son. That's his wife there. I was telling you about Mary Liz. Edward tried to save some of the girls in Twins 1 or 2. And he was swept down the river with some of the girls while saving them. He survived with some of the girls, not all of them, obviously. And this man, in my opinion, is just completely broken inside. Like, I feel horrible for him. What happened, yes, they should be held accountable. Absolutely. I get that 1,000,000%. Like, these families deserve justice. But like, I feel so bad for this guy. Like, I think he is just dealing with some serious PTSD. I don't think he's been able to cope. He lost his dad. I mean, his entire life was turned upside down. He saw things at night that he's got to live with for the rest of his life. Like, it's just a very horrible situation. And, when in one of the other hearings that, we can go over if you guys want to one day. Hey, Boston. When they are cross-examining him on the stand, I just felt they were so, I'm like, come on, be nice. But no, this lawyer means business. And he's like, did you abandon these girls? Like, and he's like, no. And like, I understand he doesn't feel like he abandoned them. He feels like he did everything he could, but like, they really wanted him to say like, yes, I abandoned them. I don't know. It's just sad. Very sad all the way around, like very life-changing, heartbreaking, all the words you can think of. Okay. But that's him there in the back, like I said, right here next to his wife. And I just noticed him breaking down as they're talking about, how these families were harassed on the internet.
To put their daughter's picture and their personal cell phones onto social media because they were so hopeful that some Grant Griffin had plucked their daughter off of a debris pile, or some sister 6 miles downriver had plucked their daughter off of a debris pile. They were so desperate. Here's my daughter. If you've seen her, please call me. Prank calls all night long. And they had to answer their phone because they didn't know if it was somebody legitimate.
Yeah, he's tore up.
I'm talking about people going, I've got your daughter.
Cook.
Here she is. Mommy. The most cruel human behavior that you can imagine. Now, is there anything that you can do about cruel human behavior? No. Okay. But Incident Command could have. They could have said, no, guys, don't put your phone numbers out there. We're going to set up a tip line. We'll monitor the tip line. That's our job, not yours. Those prank phone calls have gone on for a year. Parents have told me they've gotten them as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Okay. Again, you can't manage the cruelty of the world, but you can make a difference on how we respond in crisis management to avoid that kind of utter torture. Parents described to me that there was an element of relief to finding their daughters' bodies just so that they knew just so that they knew. A huge disaster with autopsies. One JP saying that there's mandatory autopsies, the other JP saying not. Girls' bodies being transferred to ME's offices without parents being told. A disaster, an absolute disaster. Parents not wanting autopsies that were performed. A total lack of incident command. The death note. And, you know, I do want to point out here, in any crisis, people are doing the best they can. I mean, there were volunteers. There were people trying so hard. The same thing happened in Uvalde. People meant so well. They wanted to take action, but they weren't told what to do. And same thing here. People meant well. Volunteers meant well. They cared. But you can't self-deploy as a volunteer. You have to have somebody telling you what to do. And that was absent. And it added to human despair. It added to torment. There was no getting those babies back. They were gone, but
What's
it
up,
could have
Ellen?
helped somewhat
Good
in
to
this
see you.
process. The death notification process was a disaster in the first few hours. You had parents showing up to Grimes Funeral Home, identifying their daughter, recognizing another girl and being told, hey, can you call them? I mean, no. Yeah, I mean, we can do better, but we can't do better unless we dispatch people that know what they're doing, right? Unless we get an incident commander down there, whoever it is. That's what you guys are the experts on that. Is it a ranger? Is it a strike force that's on call that can go anywhere in the state of Texas and set up incident command and mass casualties? I don't know. That's what we're looking to you for, but something's got to happen. And it was just as bad in Uvalde. This is a picture of the reunification center. It was complete chaos. I think I've made my point on that. Now we get to the really hard part. What I've been calling the impact crater, which is so deep and so wide and so incomprehensible. I mean, the palpable grief of these families that are sitting in this courtroom, the absolute grief of the Eastland family, which is very, very real. We left our interviews with them extremely empathetic towards them as well. They're a highly traumatized family. But I mean, the stories I've heard about, the siblings, the brothers at home that can't stand it. The sisters that were there, the sister that walked her little sister from the infirmary and tucked her into her cabin, and hours later she was gone. The cousin from Senior Hill that tucked her little baby cousin in, and hours later she was gone. I mean, I cannot describe to you what is going on. Grandparents who are trying to deal with their child's pain, but also their own grief of losing a grandchild. I mean, it's just so pervasive. The relationships that have been destroyed, the generational relationships that have been destroyed here, the impact crater is unbelievable, okay? It's just shattering. But that emotion needs to be commented on, but it's certainly not what the emotion gives us the passion to have a call to action, but it's really logic and common sense and reason that gets the job done, right? That's going to be what you guys do after these hearings. And I'm gonna give you a quote from, I was sitting in the Hollis's farmhouse in Belleville, and after hearing their heart-wrenching story, Lacey Hollis said something so logical and so reasonable and so common sense. And it's really the call to action for this committee. And that is, she tearfully told me, I just want parents to look at their child after camp and know that they were kept safe and not lucky. And it wasn't just Mystic. Guys, it was not just Mystic. You have a big job to do, because it was all those camps where kids were just lucky. They were either lucky that they weren't in session. They were lucky that their session hadn't started. They were lucky that the cabin they were in floating down the river, they just didn't die. Taking nothing away from God's miracles. They were God's miracles. but it wasn't camp safety. So that's a wrap from me. I welcome your questions. I will say one last thing. Along with all of the people in this room from both sides and our amazing team and all the lawyers, we are hungry. We are hungry for this committee to do your thing. I mean, you're powerful people that can answer this call to action, and every single one of the people in this room and listening are hungry for that action. So thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Garrett.
I really like that lady. She did a fantastic job. Round of applause to her. Very well said, very well done, very well presented. I'm not going to go over the Eastland's testimony today. I want to kind of save that so we can go over the, I think we'll start with the survivors' parents. Let me find it. This was a 10-hour-long hearing, so yeah. But like I said, I'm going to skip over the Eastland stuff. We're just going to go straight into the parents. Hold on. Some of this stuff I have to get off of, I think, TikTok, because like their cameras cut out at the end. All right, hold on. I'm having to go through a lot of hearing stuff. All right, here we go. I'm going to start right here. Let me get my screen. I know it's not up. Don't come for me. All right, here we go.
On the July 2025 flooding events will now come to order. All right, with Ms. Sprunt, please begin.
Chairman, vice chairs, and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. To Casey Garrett and Judge Massagill and your team, thank you for your hard work and excellent presentation yesterday. My name is Julie Sprunt Marshall. I'm a surgeon here in Austin. My husband, Skylar, and I are parents to a 9-year-old daughter, Mackenzie. On July 4th, Mackenzie was a camper in Twins 2 when she was swept more than a mile downriver and survived. I am also a former camper at Camp Mystic. I loved this camp enough to send my daughter to it. I assumed the Eastland family took our love, loyalty, and trust seriously enough to maintain appropriate safety plans. I assumed, since I attended 30 years ago, that the Eastland family would have invested in safe technology to improve safety at Camp Mystic. It has become very clear they did not. I want answers to the heartbreaking questions my daughter asks me about what happened to her friends. I hope Mackenzie's experience offers this committee a sense of what these children suffered, those that survived and those that did not. All of our daughters in those cabins were awake with enough time to be evacuated. Our daughters were told to stay in place. They waited. They obeyed the Eastland family's instructions. From the cabin window, Mackenzie watched flashlights bobbing in the dark as other campers and counselors made their way toward rec hall and safety. Over time, the girls were moved to the top of the bunk beds as the water rose. Mackenzie told me that, eventually, she and the other girls understood no more adults were coming to rescue them. She remembers Edward crying out to the sky to stop the rain. The rain did not stop. The water slowly rose in her cabin. The Eastland's prayers didn't save the girls that night. I worry the Eastland's prayers going forward are not an appropriate safety plan. Girls began crying for their mothers. Girls were crying that they wanted to go home. I cannot fathom this. We cannot accept it. Had these 8-year-old girls and their counselors been allowed to run for their lives, there were many safe places to go. We all grew up at that camp. We knew those safe places. Our girls did not. Instead, they obediently waited, and the counselors, heroes themselves, decided that if the water reached their shoulders, they would evacuate the girls rather than leaving them to drown in their cabin. Once the water was 2 feet from the ceiling, the bunk bed tipped, spilling the girls into the water. Mackenzie was swept out of the window. In total darkness, amid fast-moving, churning, debris-filled water, Mackenzie fought for her life as the current catapulted her downriver. She describes thinking, "This is what it is like to die. This is it." My daughter tried to grab onto cypress trees, but could only strip leaves off the branches. She would lay flat in the river, feet first, but would have to be under the level of debris because it was all so thick. The river pushed her under over and over again, and she would hold her breath as long as she could. The debris was so thick, she could barely come up for air. She has told me she thought she should just give up. She saw flashlights in the distance. She clung to a tree and began yelling help, along with another girl from Twins 1. The neighbors heard them and put their own lives at risk to rescue both girls. Strangers then, guardian angels and heroes forever, they pulled them from the water at great risk to their own lives. The neighbors, the Griffin family, texted Britt Eastland at 4:45 a.m. to tell him 2 of his campers had been found alive downriver. Britt did not respond. When the Griffins notified Camp Mystic about our 2 daughters, Camp Mystic made no effort to reunite our girls with their cabin mates, nor did they provide updates to us about their location or well-being. They remained in the care of the Griffins, who at that time were strangers to us, whose house was barely standing. Hours later, the girls were evacuated from the Griffin property by helicopter. Given our daughter's experience, these 2 girls should have at least been medically evaluated by the camp's health officer, Mary Liz Eastland.
Now, see, this lady is upset, and the Eastlands had, and the Griffiths, which was next door to Camp Mystic, who saved 2 of the girls. They say that they were so overwhelmed at Camp Mystic, they knew that the 2 girls were safe with the Griffiths and allowed them, to stay there. So, so they were safe. But the parents don't see it that way. They think that Mystic should have taken the girls back over with them. So I don't know. Hello, Jabber. Good to see you. Good to see you.
She made no effort to do this. We were never called that day by the Eastland family. I want to speak specifically about Mary Liz Eastland because her failures as a registered nurse and the camp health officer touched directly on my duties in the medical profession. Mary Liz testified under oath earlier this month as camp director, registered nurse, and camp health officer. As the camp health officer, she was required to be on site and on call. The infirmary was staffed around the clock by licensed nurses that she supervised. She testified that she did not know the camp was under a flash flood watch on July 3rd. She did not know the difference between a watch and a warning. She was not signed up for code red alerts. All things that we are very familiar with, especially in the medical community, especially if you are providing trauma care. She did not go to the infirmary that night. When the gatehouse flooded, she knew something unprecedented was happening. When asked what she did with that knowledge and that concern, her answer was simple and emblematic: nothing. She did not call the nurses to warn them. She did not instruct them to check on the cabins. She never called 911. She abandoned the campers on Senior Hill and the flats. Instead of running toward the children for whom she was duty-bound to render aid and care, she admitted she never even tried. Instead, she ran the opposite direction, to higher ground, while our children were told to shelter in place. Even worse, they evacuated the nurses from the Guadalupe campus instead of instructing them to stay and help. After the flood, she did not survey the camp for missing or injured children. As chief health officer, she did not know that dead children were on the grounds of the camp for days. She failed her statutory obligation to report camper deaths to DSHS within 24 hours. Months later, and today, She admitted she still has not. In the aftermath of the flood, on July 4th and 5th, I was called upon to perform medical evaluations on surviving campers because the camp health officer was nowhere to be found. Assessments for concussions, evaluations for lacerations, concern for water inhalation injuries. In her testimony, one exchange horrified me. Counsel put the question squarely. You knew the property, you knew the flood lines, you knew the access points, your children knew them. And these were first-year campers. You had 34 more years of experience than Seal, my daughter's very best friend. She needed your help and you abandoned her, didn't you? Her answer, yes. Just days after this astonishing admission of abandonment, she was photographed at Camp Mystic with a beaming smile and a Camp Mystic t-shirt on, recruiting campers and counselors for this summer. I am a surgeon. When my patient needs urgent medical care, I do not call families and ask what to do. I know what to do. That duty is mine as a medical doctor. The state has that deal with me and holds me to a standard. I take that responsibility very seriously. I maintain my certification. I keep safety and planning at the forefront of my medical care. I ensure I answer my pager, especially if I'm on call. If I go out of town, somebody covers my pager. Mary Liz Eastland should have known her heightened duty of care as a nurse and camp health officer. Instead, those that relied upon her and called out for her were left stranded. Children called 911 before Mary Liz did. The Eastlands say that returning to camp is for the healing of its campers. In October, my traumatized and grieving daughter received a photocopied handwritten letter from Tweety. It was addressed directly to Mackenzie, not to us, her parents. It was mailed without our consent or knowledge. Some of the lines included, "She was a mystic girl and all shall be well. Camp is even more beautiful in heaven. Can you imagine the heavenly chorus of Dick and our precious mystic sisters singing songs together?" This letter arrived while we were counseling Mackenzie through her own personal losses and through the deaths of her friends. And while recovery efforts to find Seal's body
Yeah, I'm on mute. There you go. I'm on mute again. Sorry, I had to walk away for a second. I don't know why that lady, Tweety Eastland is her name. Okay, she's the wife of Dick Eastland who passed away in the flood. Why she would send that letter, I don't know. There's just a lot of different ways she could have gone about that. Was saying, what was it? I got to go back and hear it again.
chorus of Dick and our precious even more beautiful. She was a mystic girl and all shall be well. Camp is even more beautiful in heaven. Can you imagine the heavenly chorus of Dick and our precious mystic sisters singing songs together?
Camp is more beautiful in heaven. Oh, Lord. And can you picture them all singing together? There's a time and a place. I don't think that was the time nor the place, Tweety. Not good.
This letter arrived while we were counseling Mackenzie through her own personal losses and through the deaths of her friends.
Who's talking?
And while
the lady talking right now is a mother of one of these survivors from one of the twins' cabins. Sorry, Oakley has his ball. Her daughter was swept out of the cabin and luckily survived. Many of the girls in her cabin did not. So she's there testifying on behalf of her daughter. And of course, Seal, who was really good friends with her daughter. By the way, this is Seal Stewart. She is still missing. One of the only people still missing from the Kerr County floods here in Texas. But yes, Seal Stewart missing from Camp Mystic. And they're looking for her every single day.
while recovery efforts to find Seal's body in that same river were still ongoing and continue to this day. This letter was the opposite of what my child needed at that time. My daughter survived. I'm grateful every day, but I want this committee to understand what survival looks like. Mackenzie says in a small voice, "I didn't mean to leave the cabin," as if the river that ripped her through a window was a rule she broke. She is sad that she did not get to say sorry to Seal or goodbye. Her last memory of her best friends are the fear and frenzy next to her on a top bunk, waiting for capable adults who never came, one of whom is a registered nurse and has plans to take care of 850 children this summer. My daughter cannot yet fully hold the death of her best friends, so her 9-year-old mind has transferred the grief onto a pair of stuffed bunnies that she had to drop while swimming for her life. On July 6th, she sobbed that her bunnies were supposed to be with her forever, that her bunnies were supposed to watch her grow up, that her bunnies were supposed to be there when she got married. That is what a child-sized container for unthinkable grief looks like, and it's just starting. Mackenzie is not alone. This is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. Camp Mystic has announced that it plans to reopen this summer and bring 850 girls back. In part, they have said, to help them heal. The Eastlands have no training in trauma psychology. They are traumatized and suffering from PTSD themselves, understandably so. They are not equipped to care for traumatized children. They were not equipped to keep them alive. And now the plan still feels like going forward, it's more dependent on prayers than safety plans. The camp will be conducting an incredible, dangerous experiment on children. Campers will be there without their families, without their support systems, without their prior counselors, testing what will happen at the very first heavy rain, at the first clap of thunder, at the first time a noise startles them awake. The Eastland family failed to understand the responsibility they accepted when they assumed the care of our children. That failure has been obvious from July 3rd to this date.
Sorry, she shouldn't be working there anymore after admitting she didn't act on helping like she should have. Right. I agree. But see, we've got to listen to her testimony. I haven't listened to hers. I listened to some of, what's his name? Edward Eastland? Yes, Edward. All right, let's continue.
And now they intend to accept that same responsibility again this summer for 850 girls. We, the parents, are doing the best we can. We are holding children who wake up screaming. We are sitting with friends who are still waiting for their daughters to come home. We are watching the sky every time the forecast calls for rain. We cannot do this alone. I'm asking this committee, please, to act. Do not let this camp reopen on the schedule and on the terms set by the people who failed our daughters. Make sure that the next time the rain comes, the adults responsible for these children know what a watch and a warning mean. Make sure that the next time the rain comes, our daughters are not left waiting for a rescue that's not going to come. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Smart.
these testimonies are a tearjerker, to say the least. So I'm giving you guys a warning. I've already watched them, so yeah, I understand if people don't want to. It's perfectly fine, but we're gonna soldier through because it needs to be heard.
Members, any questions? Extremely powerful, moving. That would make more sense.
In addition to my wife, I'll keep it brief because thankfully Ms. Garrett yesterday, her amazing presentation and y'all's excellent questions today, I think have covered a lot of the ground. In the days and weeks after July 4th, I expected the only thing that Camp Mystic would care about would be the family sitting behind me and all of their campers that had gone through this horrific, traumatizing experience. Not just the ones that got washed down river like Mackenzie, but any of those girls that had to sit in the rec all night. We never heard anything from Camp Mystic. They never checked on Mackenzie. Instead, a couple months later, the first thing we heard was the letter recruiting her to come back for this coming summer, along with emailed announcement plans to reopen. That was shortly followed by they're hiring a PR firm, putting out statements, putting out news articles that are trying to whitewash the camp, make statements like, we didn't get any warning, we couldn't have done anything different, it was a wall of water. We did have a plan. These are easily verifiable false statements. And some of them are the most disingenuous things that I've ever heard. And in this circumstance, it's just shameful. Even today, claiming those cabins weren't in the floodplain. I mean, I think a lot of y'all already touched on this, especially Senator Perry. If you can't, those statements, by the way, in the news articles were repeated in litigation in court and today. It goes without saying, if you can't trust people under oath, their answers under oath, you can't trust what's on an application or what they're going to tell parents of kids coming back to camp or anything else. I think y'all get that. So the main point I wanted to make, the one that comes from my heart, goes to the impact crater. Every one of those false, disingenuous statements, equivocations, every one of those is like another grenade being thrown into the impact crater. The parents back here have just been in agony, We've been living it. Thankfully, our daughter, is alive and we hope will be okay, but we're close enough to these people. They've just been in agony. And to this day, they continue to widen that impact crater. For everyone who loved those precious, the most precious little girls you've ever seen. So I just ask, please, to anybody who's listening and anybody that can help with this, let these families have closure and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Members, any questions? Thank you.
Members, any questions?
Members of the committee. On July, my wife, Chairman Flores, Chairman Meyer, members of the committee, my wife and I entrusted our 8-year-old daughter to Camp Mystic last summer. On July 4, that trust nearly cost her her life. This committee's fact-finding will help inform whether Camp Mystic's conduct on July 4th met the minimum standards required to take custody of other people's children. In my family, camps are a tradition. My sister was a camper and a counselor at Camp Mystic, but traditions do not satisfy a licensing standard, and being beloved does not erase failure. Families are not demanding perfection in a natural disaster. We are demanding accountability for the decisions made before and on July 4, because child protection standards mean nothing in Texas if we don't enforce them. A daycare with 27 dead children and this evidence already on record would have already been closed. The Eastland's sworn testimony in court on April 13, 14, and 15, and this committee's hearing this week are all public. Anybody can read the transcripts. The facts already established are devastating, and some facts are just simply clear violations of custodial duties and Texas law. Before I continue, I do want to acknowledge the unimaginable suffering, unimaginable, of the families of the 27 campers and counselors who lost their lives at Camp Mystic. None of my remarks today are intended to compare the loss of my family with their permanent loss. In the weeks before camp, I had recurring nightmares of my daughter in danger in a river. God clearly placed this burden on my heart for reasons I couldn't comprehend at the time. I never would have thought that danger would be because of the adults. At drop off on June 29, I firmly told my daughter to fight to get out of the water, to not rely on adults if she was ever in trouble. What Dick Eastland said after overhearing me and shaking my hand is seared in my memory. His exact words were, "Sir, do not worry. I promise we are going to take very good care of your daughter." That promise was broken. As floodwaters rose on July 4, campers and counselors in Twin 1, my daughter's cabin, begged to leave and cried for help.
Yeah, Cook. So it's crazy. A lot of these parents have talked about things like this, and one of them, he's not here today in this hearing, but his daughter was Eloise Peck, Lulu Peck, and they showed drawings and everything that she had a huge fear of thunderstorms and floods. And it's just crazy. You know, that little girl had a premonition, in my opinion. It's very sad. I'll have to find that clip where they talk about it.
They were frightened for hours. The emergency instructions and Ed Eastland told them to stay in their cabin and wait for further instructions. No one ever evacuated them. People here today have been on site. It was 20 steps from my child's cabin to stairs to a safe second story, but nobody told her to take those steps. She's 8 years old. Around 4 a.m., my daughter was forced from her cabin on a mattress, thrown into a raging river. Darkness, debris-filled water. At 8, she fought for her life. My daughter was knocked off the mattress, struck by debris, repeatedly pulled underwater, struggled to reach the surface multiple times. She swallowed contaminated water. She just couldn't breathe. And she thought, as she had been thinking for hours, she was going to die.
That's crazy, Sarah. Yeah, like the power of this river was incredible. It's, I don't know. Sad.
She stretched out her arms, last final attempt, and miraculously, she caught vines on a tree. In her first year at camp, my daughter faced death, and she saw death. Between the flashes of lightning at some point on her journey, she had been in another tree, and she could see a child about her size face down in the water. She feared that if she died, no one would ever find her. That's the same fear today for Seal Stewart. When a stranger with no duty to act and no guarantee of surviving reached her, my daughter cried out, "Am I going to die today?" This committee has seen the 433 video. Y'all seen the unredacted video. 2 children of 3 swept away from Camp Mystic on a stranger's bathroom floor, traumatized. Camp Mystic never searched for my daughter downstream. They didn't rescue her. They didn't evacuate her. As parents, we coordinated that day her evacuation with the rescuing family and family friends, not Camp Mystic. When her rescuers drove her on when her rescuers drove over high ground. And
Also, just want to say that there's like no cell service out there, so it was really hard for people to get down to Camp Mystic because where it's located, all the roadways were washed out, flooded over. It took a lot for them to actually get down in there.
Offered to return her to camp. Camp Mystic did not take her back. The camp had a custodial duty, and it neglected and abandoned her twice, once in the cabin and once in the aftermath. For more than 6 hours, my wife and I did not know whether our daughter was still alive. We knew she had been rescued from the family that rescued her, but that family was in danger. Their home was imperiled. The rescuing family were strangers to us at that time, maybe known to the Eastlands. They were strangers to us. We didn't leave our child with that family. We left her with Camp Mystic. Camp Mystic never told us anything about our daughter, not then and not now. My daughter has suffered physical injuries and they have healed. Psychological injuries will last a lifetime. Her memories of the horror have grown sharper over time. She's anxious without cause. She carries herself knowing adults may fail to keep her safe. Her innocence as a child has been taken from her. She's 8. Her older brother's been deeply affected. So have we as our parents. This committee and Texas leaders must understand all the conditions that produced this catastrophe. No written evacuation plans, no muster sites, unheeded warnings and watches, no adequate training, no drills, complacency, no chain of command that did not begin and end with Dick Eastland. Children left in cabins as dangers escalated. Any licensed operation could replicate these decisions. Lax standards and practices fail under pressure. Every family that might send a child to a Texas camp has a stake in the committee's work and in DISH's determination. An extraordinary flood does not relieve operators of their duty of care. The public case for reopening has rested largely on false choices and narratives. Edward Eastland himself has destroyed the false narrative in court that it simply happened too fast. He conceded that at 1:45 a.m. he saw the camp flooding, and at 3:15 a.m. every child in the flats could have walked to safety with one loudspeaker instruction. Same loudspeaker that could have been used to call. Committee's independent investigators testified yesterday. The same would have been true as late as 3:26 a.m. Further, Dick Eastland knew at 2:33 a.m. about 4 inches of water, and we've already heard
misbehaving.
that's an emergency.
I'm just going to play one more testimony after this, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I know it's a lot.
The question is not how the river rose, how it was unusual. It's why children were not evacuated as the visible dangers rose.
Good job,
for
Cooks.
hours. Or Richard Eastland made a comment about the River Century installations. And the exact words was something to the effect of to take the human factor out. Technology does not take the human factor out. They had technology on July 4, a radio, a loudspeaker, and they didn't use it. If an operator is not capable and not prepared, it doesn't matter how much technology you install.
All right, I'm going to go down here. I don't remember who speaks first. They have the neighbor. I'm going to not go. We're just going to do another parent testimony. I can't remember, like I said, who's first. Where's Seal's mom? We'll play Seal. Again, Seal Stewart is still missing. All right, here's her mom. We're going to listen to her testimony, and then we're going to call it a day after that. And I appreciate you all for being here. I truly do.
The families and the trauma and the impact crater. Glad we have that term now. Most of those were really, really insightful and hard to hear. And I'm glad that they were shared. So thank y'all to the survivors who are speaking out in support of the trauma and the help that is needed for the families and the victims that survived. So, chairs, vice chairs, and members of this joint committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My testimony has changed a bit in light of what we heard from the Eastland family today. I haven't seen y'all yet, so thank you for making eye contact with me for the first time in almost 10 months. I thank you in advance for your indulgence. There's a lot to address. My name is Cece Stewart. I am here on the behalf of myself, my husband, Will Stewart, and our youngest daughter, Millie, who I would never succumb to an environment like this. But most of all, I'm here to speak for our oldest daughter, my precious Seal. I didn't even bring a photo today because I know that each of you know who she is, and you have seen this photo, and it continues. Tomorrow will mark 10 months since I hugged and held my 8-year-old daughter for the last time. 10 months since she spoke her last words to me. Don't worry, Mommy, I'll be okay. But we all know she was not okay. No child in Bubble Inn, Twins 1, or Twins 2 could have been. The horrors that Seal and the other children and counselors endured that night, the darkness, the thrashing, the desperate fight for breath and survival, play on an endless loop in my mind. It is a place no mother should ever have to imagine, and yet one I cannot escape. Our family will always live in two halves, before July 4th and after. And in conversations with friends, I don't even have to say July 4th. It's before and after. Since I testified before you in September, I cannot believe that I am here again today with the same desperation I had over 7 months ago. Seal is still out there, somewhere in the ruin of that river, and our families are still pleading for answers and accountability. On April 20th, a week ago yesterday, the same day that each of you had your Camp Mystic site visit, I was also in Hunt, Texas. It was raining hard. A stark reminder, I hope, of the reason of why you were all out there. I stood along the banks of the river, calling out to my sweet baby spirit, asking her to help us bring her home. Yesterday, Inspector Garrett raised the issue of the lack of incident command in the first 24 hours, which certainly merits investigation and change. We know those first 24 hours, as Chief Nimkid said as well, and we all know are the most important critical hours. That said, my family has only endured this purgatory because of the valiant and dedicated efforts of the state of Texas to find Seal. So I do want to thank each of you, Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Burrows, and especially Nimkid, and the Texas Rangers that have sacrificed so much over the last 10 years. Feels like it, but also not. Last 10 months. So why are we here? We know a lot of why, but Camp Mystic was licensed by this state and entrusted by this state as a for-profit business whose business was taking care of and protecting our children. The Eastland family swore to you and our families that Camp Mystic was safe, prepared, and ready. And now we all know that they lied to us up until today when they Representative Meyer, you pressed them for that answer. You had to explain multiple times what you were asking, but I'm glad that you finally got the answer. No, they were not prepared. So thank you for that. Those lies of safety, preparedness, and readiness caused the greatest mass casualty event involving children in the history of the state, more than Uvalde, more than Sandy Hook. The Eastlands admitted under oath that they abandoned my daughter. They abandoned all of our daughters. They left Seal with an impossible and unforgivable choice: drown in her cabin or fight violent floodwaters in the dark in a blind, desperate effort to save herself. The Eastlands can blame no one but themselves for the planning, training, and equipment they chose not to invest in. You've heard plenty by now of the Eastlands evacuation plan. The Eastlands cavalierly insist, hey, we had a plan, you just didn't like it. Well, excuse my language, but damn right we didn't like it. Their so-called plan killed our
misbehaving. There are lawsuits going on.
daughters. 7 inches of rain, 12 inches of rain, 4 inches of rain, it does not matter. Shelter in place was a death sentence camouflaged as safety. Dick Eastland enforced a culture of obedience so powerful that their staff, including the directors of the camp and his children, were afraid to assist helpless children if it meant defying Dick's orders. The titled director demands diligence, not deference to dad. The Eastlands operated on obedience, faith, and complacency and called it a plan. They rolled the dice each year and waited for the river to prove them wrong. And ultimately, while our children waited for rescue that would never come, the family obligated to protect them was improvising, sleeping, or saving themselves. And still, none seemed to know where Richard was that night, but boy, was he an authority today. The Eastlands have proven themselves incapable of protecting children. They made decisions for themselves that they admittedly denied for everyone else. The Eastlands are trying to bully their way into a license to operate camp in just a few weeks. And they told you today that they will appeal and keep operating if you deny that license. The Eastlands claim Cypress Lake is higher, it's different, it's unconnected, it's safe, but it's the same ownership, the same leadership, the same staff, the same culture, the same poor judgment. The state of Texas cannot, under any kind of scenario, certify to a parent that this family is qualified to ever watch children again. Nothing the Eastlands could do will eliminate the fundamental failures that killed my daughter, the reckless and incompetent judgment of the Eastland family. You can install sirens, you can promise you will do better next time or do the next right thing. Also, a song from Frozen 2. You cannot install judgment. You cannot retrofit character. If the operators stop being fit or possibly were never fit, the premise of any license collapses with them. The Eastland family could transfer this entire camp to the arid desert of Big Bend with nary a drop of water in sight, and it would not make a difference. No camp will be safe for any child as long as the Eastlands are associated with it. This committee may think it has no bearing on that decision, but you do and you should. Dishes has asked you for your findings. Nothing should stop you or the state of Texas from preventing future tragedy. Isn't that why we're here? And isn't Camp Mystic, the Easton family, an open defiance and violation of the very laws you helped pass in our daughters' names, as evident in their much discussed 11-page deficiencies letter from Dishes? They cannot even be bothered to comply with the most basic requirements for licensure, submitting incomplete and outdated documents, calling it a mistake, an administrative oopsie daisy by the
Yes,
guy who runs the
misbehaving.
kitchen, as if safety and compliance should not be their utmost priority, especially while under an active criminal investigation. Senator Kolkhorst, thank you for addressing the Eastland's failures to report deaths to Dishes. Not within 24 hours, not by the date of our hearing a couple weeks ago, and not even now, today. When Mary Liz was asked about this in court, it was the first time she had even read the law that governs her conduct. She was the health officer. It was her job to know. It was her job to report. She did neither and still hasn't. She is defiant and blames the camp for not reporting the deaths, the camp of which she is a director and owner. There is, however, one child she perhaps hasn't had to report yet, and that's Seal. The Eastland family markets its camp as a Christian ministry, a camp whose walls and songs and traditions all testify to the same thing, that the adults in charge are serving something higher than themselves. But the way the Eastlands have chosen to treat my family has been callous, absent, false, and demeaning. I expected that the first name on their lips every morning would be the name of the child not yet brought home. But I didn't hear Seal's name from them until I publicly demanded that they acknowledge her and that she was still missing back in September. I expected a ministry to minister to the families it had broken before it ministered to itself. My family was forced to file for an injunction to stop them from further destroying evidence so we can find out what happened to our daughters. We just want answers. We deserve that. It took 4 days of hard-fought testimony. It took a judicial order twice to command them to stop. And even then, they've appealed it. And at one point, one of Camp Mystic's own lawyers in front of me in open court approached my attorneys and told them they were going to burn in hell. The lawyers of a Christian ministry camp told my lawyers that they're going to burn in hell for trying to help me find my daughter and learn the truth about what happened. And when questioned about it, the lawyer, Thomas
I
Wright,
don't know, Chai Girl.
said, "Oh, did I say that?" And he turned around and smirked. You can see it all on the video. He was proud. So in just a few weeks, we'll be back in court. Lord knows what we'll see. The Eastlands want to move our case to arbitration, a closed-door proceeding to further shield themselves from public scrutiny and oversight. This, despite their promises of transparency and wanting answers and having nothing to hide. Sure. The Eastlands family's desire for truth rings as hollow as Britt Eastland's quote last week and again today, in which he stated, "The last thing we want to do is create any more pain for our parents who are grieving heavily." It certainly seems that way, Britt. So to the Eastlands, Nah, I don't know how to do this. Do not insult me by pretending that reopening is anything more than your family's attempt at self-preservation. Do not degrade me by pretending you care about safeguarding or reducing my pain. Do not ever tell our families that one day we will be happy that you opened camp this summer. You have no right to contemplate or presume our happiness. How dare you? Shame on you. You stole our happiness on July 4th. I had to leave this chamber when I heard that, so I didn't scream out loud. They believe that invocations of faith and ministry will shield them from consequences. But when a camp's response to the death of 27 children is to reopen, rebrand, and raise money, that is not a ministry. It is a business. You heard them loud and clear. Despite your pleas for them to take a step back and reflect, learn, and heal, Britt Eastland defiantly told you that, God willing, they'll be able to open this summer and make $3 to $4 million by doing so.
That's crazy.
And apparently one day I'll thank him for it. Off script also. Considering the camper to counselor ratio, I went to camp there 10 years and I was a counselor for 2 years. And I almost always had 3 counselors. And what never seemed to be asked or addressed is it's almost $8,000 to attend camp for 1 month. And if they pay a counselor $1,000, well, let's just get another $8,000 in the pocket instead of paying a counselor for $1,000. Even the youngest ones who need the most help, as admitted.
I'm about to end it,
That's
Sammy.
my anecdote on that. So, Britt, I got lost from my anecdote. After you, God willing, you'll be able to open. Britt, it's not God's decision. It's apparently
Kathleen,
yours.
I'm about to end it.
Walk away. Tend to your flock. Own your trauma. Your own family that is clearly broken. Cut the bleeding and stop the agony of our families. And if the Eastlands won't do the right thing, I ask this state to do it for them. None of them are equipped. How many more deaths are enough? So these days, I'm almost finished, or maybe not. These days, I find myself considering Seal's legacy, how she'll be remembered. It is not what I imagined for her, and certainly not what she imagined for herself. But I cannot bear the idea of Seal remaining known as Seal Stewart, age 8, unaccounted for, the only Mystic camper who is yet to be recovered. I haven't shared much publicly about Seal, who she was, what she loved, and who she wanted to be. I've been consumed with her recovery and fighting for accountability for what happened to her, not with telling the world about her. And frankly, I cherish every memory of her life and want to keep it close to my heart. But Seal's legacy is not a statistic. It is not a weather event. It is a parent's worst nightmare, but she was my daughter. And her absence is like the sky spread over everything. Seal would never want our pain to be the only thing that survived her. She was extraordinary. She was loved, and she was stolen from us. A hummingbird's heart beats 1,000 times a minute, its wings flapping so fast that they hum and vibrate. Seal moved through the world like a hummingbird, quick and bright and nimble, always in motion and hard to pin down even when she was standing right in front of you. Like my daughter, a hummingbird's life is often tragically short, but both burn bright while they're here. Full speed, full color, and far too brief. She was brave in the loud way that little girls are brave when they think nothing in the world can hurt them, because the adults who love them have promised them that nothing will. She was my twin, and not in the way that mothers sometimes mean. Something intrinsic in her was wired the same way in me. The same temperament, the same humor, the same lovable defiance. She felt things at high volume. She loved with the same ferocity. I recognized her the way you recognize your own reflection. My family and childhood friends delighted in hearing my parenting stories about Seal and how hard it was to parent myself. I will spend the rest of my life walking past mirrors and seeing the woman she should have been. And what was taken from us at Camp Mystic wasn't only her body, it was all of that motion, all the places she was still going to go, the whole long life she was owed. She was music, laughter, and play in our lives. That's what's missing from our home now. And the shape of that silence is agonizing. Neither a storm nor a river took her from us. The Eastland's complacency, hubris, and choices took her from her family, from her life, and from her future. You have to look at what happened and decide whether it counts. We can never give meaning to what happened, but we can all work together to give it purpose, to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I am not here to ask you to do anything that is not already within your power. I am asking you to use it, protect it, and strengthen it. Camp Mystic's license should not be renewed. If a child dies at a Texas camp this summer, it will not be because we lack the information to prevent it. It will be because we did not act on it. You can't rely on the Eastland family. They are defiant and blame everyone, but account to no one. Clearly, this family will not walk away willingly. They think they are above the law. So we need the state of Texas to make a decision to make a decision. Sorry, I got it. We need the state of Texas to make a decision the Eastlands refuse to make. We must get this right. This time, now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking, just devastating. And like you said, Sarah, you're like, I felt that. There's so many times in these testimonies where I'm just like complete tears the first time I heard it. It was just absolutely heartbreaking. And these parents have a lot of courage to get up here and do what they're doing. And it's a good thing that they're not opening this summer so that, but there's going to be a lot of lawsuits coming. So this story is far from over. I'd like to go over some more of the testimonies and the Eastlands testimonies. You need to hear what they have to say for themselves. It's like I said, it's just a sad situation all around. But anyways, well, you're welcome, Cooks. Wait, Sarah said something. I wanted to comment on it. Let me guess. Is that what did? Yeah, you missed it earlier when the wife, her name is Tweety, wrote a letter to one of the little girls that survived and said, "Can you imagine what it's like in heaven with Dick and the other girls singing together?" Or, heaven's, what was it? Camp is better in heaven. Some shit like that. Like, I'm like, who let that lady write that and thought, you know what? That sounds great. That's a really good idea to send that letter. Horrible. Yeah, but no, they don't need to open. And especially because I'm telling you, I want y'all to hear Edward Eastland. That man is going through things, in my opinion. He has PTSD. He's got a lot of trauma to work through. But thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you taking time away from the drama to come and hang with little old me. Anyways, all right. I love you guys. Thank you for coming. We'll see if I do another one. If y'all are interested, leave a comment in the comment section, something like that. And I may be back tomorrow on my other channel. I do not know. We'll see how the tide goes, how the tide turns. It's almost summertime. My kids will be out of school in a week. What the hell is that? All right. Love you guys. Have a good one. I'll see you around the streets. Peace out. Bye, guys. A disclaimer that I don't have all that much time today. I got a little bit of time today.
This beat is going to drop in 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's fair game, right? Bye, everybody.